Hi there, I'm Nathan Hagen. Welcome back to the Working Actors Journey Rehearsal Room. We are in our third and final session for Shakespeare's Richard II, Act 4, Scene 1 tonight. It was a bit of an abbreviated session this round. So actually, I'm going to try to make my comments very brief at the top so that we can get right into the work. I'll just say, if you're watching and you haven't seen the other weeks, go back. You're going to take away and learn so much more. What's also been really cool about this session is both Nick and Jamal have been kind of trading the roles of Richard and Bolingbroke, so you can see different takes on that. Leave questions, leave comments on the YouTube video, and we'll try to get to those as best we can. If you'd like to support the project, you can do that through Patreon. There are links below. We are still figuring out our next session in January, taking a little bit of break for the holidays, but that's where we're at. Quick thank you and shout out to some of our patrons: Ivar, Joan, Michele, Jim, Magdalen, Claudia, Clif, and Jeff. Thank you so much for your support. That is it. I will just kind of let the group get right into their work. I'll come back at the end for a little Q&A, and we'll wrap it up then. So, guys, have a great session with Richard II, and I'll see you at the end.
All right, friends, excited to dive back in. Jamal, beautiful work last week. Nick, beautiful work last week. And now we're gonna turn the mirror around and see what happens when we mix it up. So Nick's playing King Richard this week. Jamal's playing Bolingbroke. I am subjecting everyone to my Northumberland and York. And so before I want us to get a dive into the text and get a proper read of the scene. But before we do that, Nick, Jamal, anything that you wanted to talk about before we dive into the text, or just dive into a read?
I have learned so much since last week in looking at this and during this session with everybody that I have a ton of things to say. So I don't know whether or not you'd rather me say them after we read, or maybe we'll read first and then discuss.
Let's read first, because the only other thing I want to say is, Jamal, you did beautiful work last week, but also I want to encourage us. I think I said this last week as well. Let's take what's useful from last week, but then let's also approach today with a blank slate. So then the exercise is, Nick, let's see how this is resonating off of you, and Jamal, let's see how this is resonating off of you. So let's go ahead and dive in, and then Nick, let's unpack everything. Whenever you're ready, Nick, go ahead and take us away.
Alack, why am I sent for to a king? Before I have shook off the regal thoughts wherewith I reigned, I hardly yet have learned to insinuate, flower, bow, and bend my knee. Give sorrow leave a while to tutor me to this submission. Yet I well remember the favors of these men. Were they not mine? Did they not sometime cry, "All hail to me"? So Judas did to Christ, but he in 12 found truth in all but one. I in 12,000, none. God save the king. Will no man say amen? Am I both priest and clerk? Well then, amen. God save the king, and though I be not he, and yet amen if heaven do think him me. What service am I sent for hither?
To do that office of thine own good will, which tired majesty did make thee offer, the resignation of thy state and crown to Henry Bolingbroke.
Give me the crown. Here, cousin. Seize the crown. Here, cousin. On this side my hand, on that side thine. Now this golden cup is like a deep well that owes 2 buckets filling one another, the emptier ever dancing in the air, the other down, unseen, and full of water. That bucket down and full of tears am I, drinking my griefs, whilst you mount up on high.
I thought you had been willing to resign.
My crown I am, but still my griefs are mine. You may my glories and my state depose, but not my grief. Still am I king of those.
Part of your cares you give me with your crown.
Your cares set up, do not pluck my cares down. My care is loss of care, by old care done. Your care is gain of care, by new care won. The cares I give I have, though given away, they tend the crown. Yet still with me they stay.
Are you contented to resign the crown?
I? No. Nope. I. For I must nothing be. Therefore, no, no. For I resign to thee. Now, mark me how I will undo myself. I give this heavy weight from off my head, and this unwieldy scepter from my hand. The pride of kingly sway from out my heart, and with mine own tears I wash away my balm. With mine own hands I give away my crown. With mine own tongue deny my sacred state. With mine own breath release all duteous oaths. All pomp and majesty I do forswear. My manors, rents, revenues I forego. My acts, decrees, and statutes I deny. God, pardon all oaths that are broke to me. God, keep all vows unbroke are made to thee. Make me that nothing have, with nothing grieved. And thou, withal, pleased, that hast all achieved. Long mayst thou live in Richard's seat to sit, and soon lie Richard in an earthy pit. God save King Henry, unkinged Richard says, and send him many years of sunshine days. What more remains?
No more, but that you read these accusations and these grievous crimes committed by your person and your followers against the state and profit of this land, that by confessing them, the souls of men may deem that you are worthily deposed.
Must I do so? And must I ravel out my weaved up follies? Gentle Northumberland, if thy offences were upon record, would it not shame thee in so fair a troop to read a lecture of them? If thou wouldst, thou shouldst find one heinous article containing the deposing of a king, the cracking of the strong warrant of an oath, marked with a blot, damned in the book of heaven. Nay, all of you that stand and look upon me, whilst that my wretchedness doth bate myself, though some of you with Pilate wash your hands, showing an outward pity, yet you Pilates have here delivered me to my sour cross, and water cannot wash away your sin.
My lord, dispatch, read o'er these articles.
Mine eyes are full of tears, I cannot see. Yet salt water blinds them not so much, but they can see sort of traitors here. Nay, If I turn mine eyes upon myself, I find myself a traitor with the rest. For I have given here my soul's consent to undeck the pompous body of a king, made glory base and sovereignty a slave, proud majesty a subject, state a peasant.
My lord!
No lord of thine, thou insulting man, nor no man's lord. I have no name, no title. No, not that name was given me at the font, but 'tis usurped. Alack, the heavy day that I have worn so many winters out, and know not how, no, not now, what name to call myself. Oh, that I were a mockery king of snow, standing before the son of Bolingbroke, to melt myself away in water drops. Good king, great king, yet not greatly good. And if my word be sterling yet in England, let it command a mirror hither straight, that it may show me what a face I have, since it is bankrupt of his majesty.
Go, some of you, and fetch a looking glass.
Read o'er this paper while the glass doth come.
Fiend, thou torments me ere I come to hell.
Urge it no more, my lord Northumberland.
The commons will not then be satisfied.
They shall be satisfied. I'll read enough, when I do see the very book indeed where all my sins are writ, and that's myself. Give me that glass, and therein will I read. No deeper wrinkles yet? Hath sorrow struck so many blows upon this face of mine, and made no deeper wounds? Oh, flattering glass! Like to my followers in prosperity, thou dost beguile me. Was this the face that every day under his household roof did keep 10,000 men? Was this the face that like the sun did make beholders wink? Is this the face which faced so many follies, that was at last outfaced by Bolingbroke? A brittle glory shineth in this face, as brittle as the glory is the face. For there it is, cracked in 100 shivers. Mark, silent king, the moral of this sport. How soon my sorrow hath destroyed my face.
The shadow of your sorrow hath destroyed the shadow of your face.
Say that again. The shadow of my sorrow? Huh. Well, let's see. 'Tis very true. My grief lies all within, and these external manners of laments are merely shadows of the unseen grief that swells with silence in the tortured soul. There lies the substance, and thank thee, king, for thy great bounty that not only gifts me the cause to wail, but teaches me the way how to lament the cause. I'll beg one boon, and then I'll be gone and trouble you no more. Shall I obtain it?
Name it, fair cousin.
Fair cousin, I am greater than a king. For when I was king, my flatterers were then but subjects, and now, being now a subject, I have a king here to my flatterer. Being so great, I have no need to beg.
Yet ask.
And shall I have?
You shall.
Then give me leave to go.
Whither?
Whither you will, so I were from your sights.
Go, some of you. Convey him to the tower.
Oh, good. Convey. Conveyors are you all, that rise thus nimbly by a true king's fall.
On Wednesdays next, we solemnly set down our coronation. Lords, prepare yourselves.
Good. Excellent read, you two. Really excellent. Also, forgive me, my cat has woken up and is trying to groom my arm off.
The cat has to wake up and do that, so
Yeah. Really wonderful work. I want to work backwards slightly. Well, I want to do the same thing that I did last week. So Jamal, I want to check in with Bolingbroke first and just see how that was receiving the walls of text as opposed to delivering those walls of text.
It's heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It comes at you like a ton of books because there's a transference of power.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of who you are, if you've never sat in the seat of king, this is a becoming, and he's walking into something he has never been.
Mm-hmm.
And so receiving all of this and then observing all of this going through Richard, there's parts that he feels. There's parts of him that are like, what has become of you? There are parts of him that doesn't know if he's well, okay, or sanely here. And he is taking this seat regardless of any of that. And so there's like this, not a suppression, but there's this stillness that I'm feeling while receiving all of the weight that is just true, sitting in these seats that most of us will never reach.
Yeah.
So I just feel the weight. I feel the weight. There's sorrow that comes my way, but it's all twisting on the inside. But these men have been trained to be who they are in these moments when they come.
Yeah. And all eyes are on them, right? So you're not allowed to show. I think Jamal, all of that's great. And I think the only question that I would throw your way, and this is not something that needs an answer now, but I think this is just the other thing to play with and think about as we go to work through the scene, is I think that weight is absolutely the thing that is coming at him. And I think the question is, how aware is Bolingbroke at the beginning of the scene of the size of that weight and the sort of the true weight that crown is going to bestow? And I don't know. I mean, this is truly where, this is truly up to interpretation. But think about that. Like, how is he? Yeah, how much does he learn about the burden of kingship over this scene? Would be the only question I have for you. But
thank you for that question. That's good. That's the question.
Good. All right, Nick. Beautiful work. Really crystal clear. I'm gonna say, just on a technical side, you were cutting in and out just a little bit. So I would just, if you've got any apps, it wasn't to the point where it was like distracting, but I just wanted to flag it for you.
Yeah, let me turn my phone off real fast just in case. Sometimes it's because I'm so far away that it happens occasionally. It was a bummer. I worked on one of these things and I went back and watched it again and I was like, oh boy, I'm silent half of the time. But hopefully turning my phone off will help a little bit.
Great. And again, it wasn't to the point where I was like, where it was getting in the way, but I just wanted to flag it. Yeah, I think I've got PTSD from, like, in the heart of the pandemic, I think probably 30 Zoom reads, both with my own company and then with this really wonderful group called The Show Must Go Online, run by a guy named Rob Miles out of Edinburgh. And I was like, I found myself like I played Henry VI in a reading in Henry VI Part 2 with like members of the Royal Shakespeare Company and the National. These, like, it was really cool to sort of be on Zooms with all these people who suddenly had nothing to do. Yeah. But I had like the mother of all internet breakdowns in the middle of a scene, and it lives in perpetuity on YouTube. You can like go and watch it, and it's towards the end of the play when all the rebels are coming in, and you can watch my poor castmates just sort of sitting there awkwardly like, I'm like, sure. Anyways, we're not reaching that level at all, but I've since that day I've been hyper vigilant about this stuff. So really, really wonderful crystal work. I just want to know, how was that? It's an open-ended question, but just how was that? I guess I want to open it up all. So anything that you wanted to talk about before, and then also anything that occurred to you actually speaking the words out and doing it from beginning to end for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I love the rehearsal room because these, I'm a little bit familiar with this play and I've read it many, many times, and I have a completely new opinion on it from this session, which is really, really neat. Lots of things have changed, and I totally agree with you, Will, that these are equal weighted parts in this scene because Bolingbroke, though he doesn't say as much, has as much lifting to do in a completely different way. And Shakespeare brilliantly balances that out. And I do feel like as Richard is fluttering around the stage, a lot of the audience's eyes will be watching for Bolingbroke's reaction during all of these things as well. So he feels the weight of all eyes on him from the audience, just as the character feels the weight of all eyes on him from the kingdom. So it's, you know, the guy, Shakespeare was good. He was good at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, he may or may not have a future, but let's start
My toys, brother.
However, there is one thing that I've discovered since our last session and after reading this a little bit is I do feel in a way, and I understand how I used to think of Richard as sort of mopping the floor with Bolingbroke during this scene, but now I find it incredibly uncomfortable listening Italy. And now when Jamal read this, and it was great because I got to steal all of Jamal's fantastic work from last time, so
I'm gonna
thank you,
steal
Jamal.
yours because you're
And
so
you
you're
read it
slick
with this
the
incredible
language, brother.
yeah, but you had this beautiful nobility when you read it, and I feel like when it comes out of me, it's methinks he doth protest too much. Like I do believe after looking at the scene again that Richard maybe could have lived, and he seals his fate with so many words.
Yeah.
I think that if he would have just shut up in a couple of section of this, he could have survived. He could have made it. And this scene, in a way, he's killing himself, and it's really it's uncomfortable for me to watch. I don't think I'll ever look at this play the same way again, watching this scene, because I'm like, oh man, stop it, just stop it, like.
You think he does it? And again, like this is where I'm like, steal what's useful, but it is a totally blank slate. Do you think he's doing that? Like, I think this is a really interesting avenue of investigation. Do you think he's doing it deliberately?
Honestly, I think he can't help himself. The way that, I mean, I could see where he could be making a specific choice in some of those lines to say, and because he says Richard's dead, but I'm not sure if it's as much, like there's a lot of times where if Hamlet would have just shut up with Claudius, he could have lived on. Do you know what I mean? If the nurse and the friar would have shut up in Romeo and Juliet would be living in Siena with children happily forever, like, and I for me when I read this, it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel like Richard's desire for an audience and for power, like you could play it as a choice, but for me, I feel this is a tragic scene. And this is the tragedy of Richard II.
Well, so
I
then
don't know. I just feel like it's a natural undoing of himself because
well, why does he keep talking? I think would be the question, and we don't need to have an answer now. But if he is, because I think you're right. Whether he can, there's multiple places in this scene where he absolutely has the option to shut the fuck up.
yes,
and he chooses pain every single time. And so my question is, and I think this is, if you have an answer now, great, and if not, let's just hunt for it. But the question, I agree. I think he absolutely talks himself into his grave in this scene. Whether or not he is aware of what he's doing is something to play with. But why?
Yeah, like you could play it as he made the decision before he goes in that he was going to die, or maybe it happens in the middle somewhere where he just says, "Okay, this is it." Like, I mean, I think there are three ways to play it, or you could play it where he just loses his grip on I don't know how to describe it. You know what I mean? He can't help himself but dig his own grave in this scene. And it's
Well,
his
yeah. Well,
Go
and
ahead.
I guess the only thing that I would fire back is like how, and I don't know, how aware is he of the fact that he is digging his own grave? Does he think that he is arguing his case? Does he think that he is like, is he trying to win something, or is he and I don't know.
I mean, he does say it. He does say Richard shall be in an earthy pit.
Yeah.
But the way that, and I don't know, if we were doing this show together, I would have to spend a lot of time making a decision on whether or not his choice, whether he came into this scene expecting death,
Mm-hmm.
or I mean, it could be that he came into the scene expecting to win everybody over,
Mm-hmm.
and to bury Bolingbroke with his great mind, and in a way, sometimes the youth of Richard II, he causes himself a lot of trouble. I mean, it's one of the reasons that Richard goes down in this play. But at this point in the play, he's made a turn. He's grown up a lot. So I don't know. Those are the questions that I would have to continue working on. Where I'm working on this piece, it's kind of a never-ending thing. But I do. It feels cringy to me. It feels tragic. Yeah. I want to tell him to calm down and let Bolingbroke speak. And but I understand his anger. It has been usurped. Everything has been taken away from him. So,
Well,
you know.
I think I want to get us back into the text because I think that these are all incredibly exciting avenues and incredibly sort of original avenues with which to approach the scene, because you hear the scene talked about in terms of its magnificence, and you hear this the language is often held up as being exceptional, and you're right, like we do often think about this as Richard sort of mopping the floor with Bolingbroke in one last hurrah before he goes off and is killed and is martyred, right? But all of these interpretations allow Richard to preserve his status. And what is interesting about what you were talking about is that we are essentially not, I mean, not, the only way I can think to describe it is like we're essentially watching a guy have a meltdown. He falls, that we're looking at someone falling apart publicly.
Yeah, I feel like it's about a scene about ego. It has a lot to do about the power of the ego. And if he could, if he could have held that back, but he's so upset that this has been stolen from him, that which was ordained by God. And the prayers are pretty solemn that he makes. And the lines are very specifically and beautifully written. And I feel like when he invokes God a lot and compares himself to Christ in many ways. So I feel like that he doesn't understand how this could happen.
Yeah.
How could the God let this happen to him? It's almost like a Gethsemane moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
good.
Yeah, it's excellent. All right. Well, I'd love for us to dive back into. Well, Miranda, I want to turn it over to you in a second, just to hear any observations you have. The only thing that I want to throw at you, Nick, as we dive into the text, I think this is all great, and the thing that immediately leaps out to me, and the only note that I have for you at this point is I think that your handling of the text is crystal clear. It's wonderful, and what I love about the tack that you are describing is it gives us an opportunity for a lot of really exciting moment to moment decisions, right? That he is fighting those you're giving yourself strong warring impulses, which is great for drama because we love a messy human. But there's the knowledge that at some point he should shut up and let Bolingbroke talk, but then the inability to actually put that into action. And so and throwing into that also into that sort of it's the world's worst cocktail, right? But it's you're throwing into that the added ingredient of the guilt of giving up because he does invoke God, and it is, I think it can be played as a tactic to try and legitimize himself, but I also think that it is a reminder of the pressure that this person who's been on the throne since he was 9 has perhaps really internalized. And there is a moment where it's nay, if I turn my thoughts upon myself, if I myself a traitor with the rest, it's oh my God, because the third part of this is, oh my God, what have I done? What am I doing? What are the ecclesiastical ramifications for this? And I don't know, but that's I think all I would say is that I would you can allow, I think you are a very clear and the only word I can think, and it's not accurate, but it's very polished. You have a lot of polish to you as a performer, which is fantastic. And I think we can mess Richard's hair up a little bit.
Okay.
In order to tell the
Absolutely.
story that you're suggesting. Miranda, any thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple real quick. I've been thinking a lot this week about the duality of these two characters and just how wonderful this session has been to have you both switching roles, which just lends such insight into the characters and into the play and into the dynamic. And they really are mirrors of each other in so many ways, I think, and that just sort of comes to a head in this scene in particular. You know, Richard. Yeah, I love what you said, Nick, that he it's like he can't help himself. You know, does he know, you know, he knows, maybe he knows that he's just condemning himself, but he can't help himself anyway. And whenever I would teach this play to undergraduates, we would always talk a lot about at what point does Bolingbroke know, you know, decide that he's actually after the crown, you know, and at what point does Richard decide that he's going to unking himself? And I think both of those, again, that duality, those conflicts, really come to fruition in this scene and in the image of the mirror, especially. So great work! I'm loving listening to this.
Beautiful work, you two.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive back in. Again, beautiful handling. The only thing I'll throw you right at the top of this first speech, Nick, is I mean, we talk about this last week with Jamal too, but that there are Richard sort of continually chooses pain. And I think that it's right here, right? That there is that moment of like he enters and is like suddenly faced with the entire like the whole court, right? This like wall of traitors, essentially. And to take it in, and he could be very demure, very mindful. And instead he starts with, alack, why am I sent for to a king before I shook off the regal thoughts were with I reign, right? So I feel free to take, the only thing that is like, take your time in especially in this first speech, right? In that moment to moment work, right? I think that there is, yeah. Take your time and what am I trying to say? And play with making the decision to speak and making the decision to specifically take this more aggressive tack, and let's just see how that sits on you. So just like last week, Nick, just like with Jamal, I'm going to ask you to literally exit, take as much time as you need. Feel free to make Jamal and I wait as long as you want, and then come on and take your time and don't speak until you feel like you have to.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Alack, why am I sent for to a king? Before I have shook off the regal thoughts wherein I reigned. Hardly yet have learned to insinuate, flatter, bow, and bend my knee. Give sorrow leave a while to tutor me to this submission. Yet I well remember the favors of these men. Were they not mine? Did they not sometime cry, all hail to me? So Judas did to Christ, but he in 12 found truth in all but one. I in 12,000 none. God save the king. Will no man say amen? Am I both priest and clerk? Well, then, amen. God save the king. Although I be not he, Yet, amen. If heaven do think him me. To do what service am I sent for hither?
Good, Nick. Really nice. Um, Again, I want to draw your attention specifically to this phrase "sent for" that you say a couple of times in the speech, and I think that that is, if we're talking about things that stick in Richard's craw, I don't know that Richard has ever been sent for in his life before, and so I think that there is. It's interesting. We're catching him at such an interesting point because he has, again, Richard is the first person in the play to bring up the idea of him giving up the crown and giving it to Henry. But it's one thing to say, it's like Lear, right? It's one thing to like talk about giving up power, and then it's another to actually sort of like experience life where you're not able to bring your 100 knights with you everywhere you go, right? You know, suddenly Richard has deposed himself, and suddenly he is a person who can be summoned. And so I think that what I'm getting at is I think that there's processing. I think that there's a little bit room. I think you can really ask the question of what gives you the right. You know, I don't that, you know, and I think that his saving grace as a character, and I think maybe the one reason why we don't write him out, because he is I mean, when we meet him, he's a brat. And he's sort of, I mean, God love him, but he kind of remains a brat right till he dies. Profound, but he's a brat. But he is also, he has Hamlet's curiosity, and he has the ability to interrogate a situation, which I think really, and I'm speaking in draft here, like these thoughts are truly occurring to me in the moment, but really sets him apart from everyone else that we meet in the play. Because everyone else that we meet in the play is all about take a position, take a hardline position. This is right, that is wrong. I am York, you are Lancaster, right? I know that's a fast forward, but we're sowing the seeds now. But Richard, right from the get-go, he plays with things. Even in his first scene, you know, those delightful sort of like the playful rhymes he tosses off to his, you know, this we prescribe, the no physician, you know, too deep malice makes too deep incision. You know, he sort of dances along the tops of things, and I think that gets him into trouble. But it is also in this scene, it allows him. It allows him a sense of humanity. All this to say, I'm talking too much. All this to say, I think let the fact that you have been sent for stick in your craw, and really ask that question. Technically, I think before I have shook off the regal thoughts wherewith I reigned, I think right now we're spending a little bit too much money on we're tripping ourselves up on the word wherewith, which is totally understandable. It's one of those.
Yeah, you know, I have so much trouble saying wherewith, like my mouth just doesn't want to do it. So I think that's why I'm focusing so hard on it, because I keep wanting to say wherein I reigned. Mm-hmm. So wherewith just, but yes, I understand the pronoun is important right there. I reign. Absolutely.
I totally get you. And the only thing I'll say to that, man, is like, especially for now, take the pressure off yourself. If you accidentally say wherein, it's not a big deal.
Right on. Thank you.
If we hear I reigned, that'll drive the issue.
Great.
And I think give yourself time, insinuate, flatter, bow, bend my knee. These are all of the things that other people have done to you your entire life that I don't think you've ever really paid attention to. You've never had to bend the knee to anyone. And it is interesting that like, I don't know, it's not a very flattering portrait of being a subject, but let each of those images land. And then I think let's make sure, again, these are super, Nick, I want to triple reinforce, you're doing excellent work. These are super nitpicky things.
You know, along with what you said, I just noticed that I didn't really bookends this speech. Like it's sent for is in the first sentence and the last sentence. You know what I mean? So it's all, I didn't realize that until just now. So I get what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the thing that well, and it's the thing that starts this whole thing. Yeah, it is. It's a bookend. make sure that we sorrow, give sorrow leave a while. Think of sorrow as a proper noun as opposed to an improper noun. Sorrow is the person who will teach you how to do this.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I have. It's in a good spot. Let's take it again from the top with just thinking about that, and then we'll press on.
Okay. Alack, why am I sent for to a king? For I have shook off the regal thoughts wherewith I reigned. I hardly yet have learned to insinuate, flatter, bow, bend my knee. Give sorrow leave a while to tutor me to this submission. Yet I well remember the favors of these men. Were they not mine? Did they not sometime cry, all hail to me? So Judas did to Christ, but he in 12 found truth in all but one. I in 12,000, none. God save the king. Will no man say amen? Am I both priest and clerk? Well then, amen. God save the king, although I be not he. And yet amen, if heaven do think him me. To do what service am I sent for hither?
To do that office of thine own good will, which tired majesty did make thee offer, the resignation of thy state and crown to Henry Bolingbroke.
Give me the crown. Here, cousin. Seize the crown. Here, cousin. On this side my hand, on that side thine. Now this golden crown like a deep well that owes two buckets filling one another, the emptier ever dancing in the air. The other down, unseen and full of water, that bucket down and full of tears am I, drinking my griefs, whilst you mount up on high.
I thought you had been willing to resign.
My crown I am, but still my griefs are mine. You may my glory and my state depose, but not my griefs. Still am I king of those.
Part of your cares you give me with your crown.
Your cares set up, do not pluck my cares down. My care is loss of care, by old care done. Your care is gain of care, by new care won. The cares I give, I have, though given away. They tend the crown, yet still with me they stay.
Good. Before we go on, I just want to sort of unpack this chunk. Really nice work, you two. So give me the crown, here, cousin, seize the crown. So you're handling the sort of the shaking the crown, the baiting of Bolingbroke really in a really lovely way. Nick, on this side my hand, on that side thine. So I think I just want to sharpen up this shift. So Nick, just like last week, Jamal wasn't proceeding with the text until you put your hand on the other side of the crown. Go ahead and do the same. And Jamal, take as much time as you need to
Okay.
grab the crown. But
Right.
keep an eye on him. And again, it's because it is, Jamal, talking about like balance of power, right? The moment that you, and it's that sent for, right? Nick, you were sent for, and now you are sending for him, right? So you're not going to
yeah.
give it to him. You're going to make him come and get it.
Mhm.
So Jamal, it is a capitulation. So take as much time as you need to decide to do that. And then Nick, once he has done that, you have him. And then you're going to make your point. You're not actually going to let go of the crown, right? Which is how you end up with the iconic image. On this side, my hand, on that side, thine. Now is this golden crown like a deep well that owes two buckets, filling one another. So the thing to play with, Nick, and there's no specific answer, but why does he not let go of the crown, right? And why does he want to make this point? And the question too, and this is something we talked about loosely last week, is this conversation over the crown public or is it private? And it's all choice. It's all. So I don't even need you to tell me. I think just think about it and make a choice about whether. But you'll have to help me because it's Zoom, and that means that we're sort of a lot of the tools that we would have at our disposal to tell the story are not at our disposal. But really do like think about awareness level, right? On this side, my hand, on that side, thine. Am I sending it to a room full of people who want me dead, or am I sending it to this one person who definitely has fucked me, but also is my cousin?
Yeah, I can tell you my thoughts on this part changed as well because I always saw it as a public thing, and now the more that I've read it, and from playing Bolingbroke last week, it feels incredibly intimate. But I don't know if that's the right choice or not. But I do like in my brain, if we were filming it, it would cut to close up on that section, because I feel like it's a negotiation between old friends all of a sudden.
Right.
This is where their brotherly love almost comes out. It's like a conversation that they may have had over a dinner at one point.
Well, and so I think this is great. And I think, again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's an extremely interesting avenue of investigation. So let's go through the looking glass on this. But then I think this, to get just a little bit more specific, why are you forcing him to listen? What are you trying to communicate to him privately as you hand the crown? And I think we can look at the text may give us, so on this side my hand, on that side thine, now is this golden crown like a deep well that owes two buckets filling one another, the emptier ever dancing in the air, the other down unseen full of water, that bucket down and full of tears, am I drinking by crease? So I mean it's all clear in terms of the literal, like literally you're saying what?
Well, I'm sorry, just when you were thinking, when you were saying, I went back to last week in my head on Bolingbroke's line, I thought you had been willing to resign. And I think that it's the you in Bolingbroke's line that it's not Richard's line that convinces me of that intimateness because he didn't say, I thought he had been willing to resign. It felt like it had switched. So I feel like Richard's taking it off of Bolingbroke. And so I don't know, but he addressed a specific question to me. So Richard says, yeah, you can take my crown, but you can't take my sadness.
So you want to play this because you start the exchange though. So this first chunk
here with the other down unseen, and see that feels public to me. It doesn't feel private until after Bolingbroke speaks.
Okay, great.
Specifically, the drinking my griefs while you mount up on high feels like it's for an audience, and the language feels stronger and more purple and more flowery during that section. And then the next section feels more down to earth to me, which it feels. I'm not sure. It feels less showy for an exchange, and they have this brilliant back and forth that they do right there.
And that's why the image I feel is so powerful too with the crown, because whether it's private or public, you have this strong kind of face off that everyone,
and they're so close together.
Yeah, everyone is still seeing that publicly. And if you're in a room with kings, and they're both, you know what's going on, whether you can hear or not. This community is feeling everything.
And they know the image is strong enough that the crowd doesn't need to hear what they're saying because they're seeing them both holding the crown. So
I agree.
I think they would have an awareness of that.
And the added tension to that too, right, is like you're dealing with two kings, but you're also dealing with two people, and you're dealing with two people who are related to each other. And I think my question, Nick, mainly for you, is: are you? I guess to distill it down to its sort of like core is: are you trying to help Bolingbroke in this moment, or are you trying to hurt him? Because it is a warning. Is it meant in good faith, or is it meant to scare him?
I think that it feels to me like a moment of intimacy between two old friends where Richard is saying, "Are you sure you want to do this?
Right.
Do you know what you're doing? Because I'll tell you what, it's pain. You're looking at pain. And you can take this from me, and you have won, but you know, and I think that maybe Richard truly believes that he can convince his old friend this is all a terrible idea in this section. And then Bolingbroke switches back, and I don't know if this is your choice, Jamal, but we can talk about it or not. But I feel like after Bolingbroke says, "Are you contented to resign the crowd?" it turns back to public. And I don't know if that's the right choice or not, but I feel like Richard on the "I know, no, I," that he switches back to playfulness. It's like, you know, I heard a thing about Robin Williams, whereas if he was talking to one person, he would be incredibly normal and incredibly deep, and if another person came in, he would switch and they would become an audience and he would become a different person. And I could see it feels like a change when Richard goes back to "I know, no, I, for I must nothing be," like, okay, now I'm playing for the crowd again. But I don't know if that's right.
Well, it's not right or wrong. Miranda, I'll toss it over to you. I just want to make one point that I think it absolutely can be that, but you are also speaking a profoundly, like, you are also cutting to the core of the issue for you personally, not just the core of the issue for the country, but for you personally. It is a very vulnerable thing to say, "For I must nothing be." Like, it's you know, and it is a pun. I know, no, I. Like,
you're right. So the switch to public would be "Now mark me how I will undo myself," or even that could still be intimate. And then he could switch on, "I give this heavy weight from off my head."
And you absolutely can. The switch can happen anywhere, Nick. The only thing that I want to say is that if you are, because again, it's that thing with Robin Williams too, right? And I think part of what makes him such a compelling, I would have loved to see his Hamlet, to be honest. And I would have loved to see his Richard II, because something that Robin Williams had is, and I mean, I guess we didn't learn this about him until it was too late, but the engine of his humor was such a profound sadness. And just this sort of this deep well of, I don't know, in everything. I watched The Birdcage the day that he killed himself, and even, I mean, the movie's a delight from start to finish. But he's in top form, but there's you get the feeling that he's running away from something when he gets into that like extreme manic thing, and that he had the ability to, in the tradition of the best fools, he had the ability to jump into play while speaking the most dangerous truth. And what is so so I don't want to say yes or no, like, let's leave this an open-ended question. You've got a bunch of great options. See what feels right in the moment. But I think the only thing that I want to say is, if you are going to make "I know, no, I, for I must nothing be" a public admission, just know that it is a dangerous thing, both in terms of the world of this play, because it means that God's anointed is now nothing. And it is also, more potently, it is a dangerous admission for this man to say, "I am about to lose everything that defined me." So it's like, it can be played, but just don't lose that. Miranda.
Yeah, just noticing this is such a dramaturgical picky point, but again, I think the language is here to help us. You know, Richard goes suddenly into rhymed couplets. "That bucket down and full of tears am I, drinking my griefs whilst you mount on up on high." And Bolingbroke, I thought you had been willing to resign. And Richard matches him. My crown I am, but still my griefs are mine. And so they complete the rhymed couplet there. Richard comes in with another one, depose and those. And again, Bolingbroke tries again with your crown, and Richard is completing the couplet and continues. And then Bolingbroke doesn't match him there. Are you contented to resign the crown? And Richard has that final couplet in that devastating image, as Will was just saying, with be in the, and then he goes into the ritualistic. So maybe there's something in there and in that rhyme scheme to think about and to help.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see what you're
demarcate.
saying. I think I know what I'm going to try, so I'll give it a shot and we'll see
Great.
what happens.
So let's dial back. Let's go from where feels good, Nick? Where do you want to take it from?
Let's see, where's he grab the crown? Here, well, we can go from give me the crown if
Great.
you want to.
That works for me. Jamal, good?
Yep.
All right.
All right, when you're ready, friends.
Give me the crown. Here, cousin. Seize the crown. Here, cousin. On this side my hand, on that side thine. Now is this golden crown like a deep well that owes two buckets filling one another, the emptier ever dancing in the air, the other down, unseen and full of water. That bucket down and full of tears am I, drinking my griefs whilst you mount up on high.
I thought you had been willing to resign.
I cry, but still my griefs are mine. You may my glories and my state depose, but not my griefs. Still am I king of those.
Part of your cares you give me with your crown.
Your cares set up do not pluck my cares down. My care is loss of care by old care done. Your care is gain of care by new care won. The cares I give I have, though given away, they tend the crown, yet still with me they stay.
Are you contented to resign the crown?
I, no. No. I, for I must nothing be, therefore no. No, for I resign to thee. Now, mark how I will undo myself. I give this heavy weight from off my head, and this unwieldy scepter from my hand. The pride of kingly sway from out my heart. With mine own tears I wash away my balm. With mine own hands I give away my crown. With mine own tongue deny my sacred state. With mine own breath release all duteous oaths. All pomp and majesty I do forswear. My manners, rents, revenues I forego. My acts, decrees, and statutes I deny. God, pardon all oaths that are broke to me. God, keep all vows unbroke are made to thee. Make me that nothing have with nothing grieved. And thou, with all, pleased that hast all achieved, long mayst thou live in Richard's seat to sit, and soon lie Richard in an earthy pit. God save King Henry, unkinged Bolingbroke says. Sorry, God save King Henry, unkinged Richard says, and send him many years of sunshine days. What more remains?
Tremendously exciting, man. Also, I think that's what they used to call a Freudian slip right there at the end.
Right.
But really exciting, man. That was really great. Just a couple technical things. We won't go back just a clock for when we hit it again. It's just a scansion thing. My manners, rents, revenues. I forgot.
Oh, revenues. There it is. Yeah.
It's not a way that the word would like
irritating.
ever be pronounced, but it's the paramides thing from Antony and Cleopatra, right? It's like
Yeah.
all right. Revenues. And I think I love and soon lie Richard in an earthy pit being sort of a more intimate moment. Just don't rush through the line. Don't swallow the line. I think you can, if you're going to make an intimate moment, you can you can luxuriate in that image a little bit.
Awesome.
But great. All right, let's press on. No more, but that you read these accusations and these grievous crimes committed by your person and your followers against the state and profit of this land, that by confessing them, the souls of men may deem that you are worthily deposed.
Must I do so? And must I ravel out my weaved up follies? Gentle Northumberland, if thy offences were upon record, would it not shame thee in so fair a troop to read a lecture of them? If thou wouldst, there shouldst thou find one heinous article containing the deposing of a king, and cracking the strong warrant of an oath, marked with a blot, damned in the book of heaven. Nay, all of you that stand and look upon me, whilst that my wretchedness doth bait myself, though some of you with Pilate wash your hands, showing an outward pity, yet you Pilates have here delivered me to my sour cross, and water cannot wash away your sin.
Good. One more technical scansion thing. If thy offenses were upon record as opposed to record.
Okay. Thy offenses were upon record. Mm-hmm.
And I think just in terms of just finding peaks and valleys, I think Richard does find exceptional power, paradoxically, in the act of giving up the crown, right? He clothes himself in the full majesty, in the full weight of his majesty in order to make a spectacle of himself. But I do play with the idea that it takes it out of him, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What more remains? I think it's okay. Am I done? I think rather than sort of greeting the lecture of your offenses that you have to read out with exasperation, I think let's see what happens if that is the first thing that legitimately breaks your heart. It's my
more sadness, less
it's like
I understand what you're saying.
What? It's it's one thing. It is one thing for you to give up the crown, and it's another thing for you to have to publicly humiliate yourself like that. And so it's about those. I think part of what makes this scene so outside of interpretation, I think just textually, one of the things that I personally find so exciting about this scene for Richard's journey is there are moments where he has 2 or 3 times in this scene he has the rug pulled out from under him. And he goes into free fall. Yeah. And then he manages to pull himself out, he from this place of he's having to literally do the most humiliating thing that could be asked of him in this situation.
And that would be fear. That would make him afraid for a moment. And I haven't found that fear yet in the scene. It's funny because there's not a lot of moments where he appears afraid, but it could be right there from Northumberland, and Northumberland seems to be the most vicious anti-Richard character.
Oh, without a doubt. And it's never explained. We never have outside of just general Northumberland sort of lists some generic grievances against Richard, but you're right. It's Northumberland is fucking venal against Richard, and we never fully understand why.
It's just the Percys. They were always rebelling. They were always rebelling over the centuries. That's my theory. Just had to add that.
Are you a Percy, Will?
Yeah, they're shits.
There you go.
Northumberland's my 21st great grandfather. Yeah, they're shits. And now I'm living in a 2-bedroom apartment instead of a castle. So here we go. Anyways, so I think that's great. I think that's great. But then he manages what's sort of like so like badass, right? I think where the badassery is to be found is like it's where he finds his courage, right? Because it's not that. And I mean, this is like, I think this is the phrase that's been splashed on 1,000 t-shirts, right? But it's like, it's not, bravery is not the lack of fear. Courage is what you do when you are faced with that kind of fear.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
This is the moment where Richard is able to find courage, right? Because it's possible that this is the first time he has felt this potent of fear in his life. And it's fascinating, and it's so moving that time and again, when Richard is placed with his back to the wall, does he make a spectacle of himself? Yes. Is he a drama mama? Unquestionably. But he also does manage to turn it on the people who are coming for him. We see it here, and we see it in the farewell with his wife, and we see it in his death scene. He kills 3 of the assassins who are after him. So it is, again, it's the tragedy of like this, if this guy, and we see it time and again in the whole history cycle, right? Like, I just did Henry IV Part 1, and the thing we talked about with that Hal Hotspur fight is they should never have been, those 2 young people should never have been put in a situation where they had to kill each other. They would have done so much more together than either of them would have ever been able to achieve individually. But it's like time and again, this system, right, of sort of total power being entrusted in one person, and it's based on hereditary, based on bloodline as opposed to merit, right? Time and again, we meet people who have so much raw potential. To be great people, to be great leaders, and we see them develop it too late, or not get a chance to develop it. Anyways, I'm off my soapbox. Let's get back into it. So let's just take that again, sort of thinking about that. I'll give you the tee up, and then we'll press on.
Yeah, and just one more thing. I think the gentle Northumberland is really interesting. That's always the fact that he calls him gentle Northumberland. And now with that direction, it would make sense to me that he's negotiating at this point, and trying to make him see the error in his ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, I'll give that a try.
Absolutely. It can absolutely be a plea. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. No more.
Sorry, where do you want to start from?
Let's go from what more remains. So the very last line of that nice big chunk.
Great. What more remains?
No more, but that you read these accusations and these grievous crimes committed by your person and your followers against the state and profit of this land, that by confessing them the souls of men may deem that you are worthily deposed.
Must I do so? Must I ravel out my weaved-up follies? Gentle Northumberland, if thy offences were upon record, would it not shame thee in so fair a troop to read a lecture of them? If thou wouldst, thou shouldst find one heinous article containing the deposing of a king, and cracking the strong warrant of an oath, marked with a blot, damned in the book of heaven. Nay, all of you that look upon me, all of you that stand and look upon me, whilst that my wretchedness doth bait its... Sorry. Nay, all of you that stand and look upon me, whilst that my wretchedness doth bait myself, though some of you with Pilate wash your hands, showing an outward pity, yet you Pilates have here delivered me to my sour cross. And water cannot wash away your sin.
My lord, dispatch. Read o'er these articles.
Mine eyes are full of tears, I cannot see. And yet salt water binds them not so much, but they can see a sort of traitors here. Nay, If I turn mine eyes upon myself, I find a traitor with the rest. I find myself sorry. Nay, if I turn mine eyes upon myself, I find myself a traitor with the rest.
Good. And I think slow down here, because I think this is the other moment of real terror for Richard. That it's like there's the fear of having to humiliate himself, and then there's the full weight of what he has done.
Thank you. Okay. Mine eyes are full of tears I cannot see. And yet salt water binds them not so much, but that they can see a sort of traitors here. Nay, if I turn mine eyes upon myself, I find myself a traitor with the rest. For I have given here my soul's consent to undeck the pompous body of a king, made glory base and sovereignty a slave, proud majesty a subject, state a peasant.
My lord.
No lord of thine, thou hot, insulting man, nor no man's lord. I have no name, no title, no. Not the name was given me at the font, but 'tis usurped. Alack, the heavy day that I have worn so many winters out, and know not now what name to call myself. Oh, that I were a mockery king of snow, standing before the son of Bolingbroke, to melt myself away in water drops. Good king, great king, and yet not greatly good. And if my word be sterling yet in England, let it command a mirror hither straight. It may show me what face I have, since it is bankrupt of his majesty.
Go, some of you, and fetch a looking glass.
Read o'er this paper while the glass doth come.
Fiend, thou torments me ere I come to hell?
Urge it no more, my lord Northumberland.
Commons will not then be satisfied.
Well, they'll be satisfied. I'll read enough. When I do see the very book indeed where all my sins are writ, and that's myself. Give me that glass. And therein will I read. No deeper wrinkles yet. Hath sorrow struck so many blows upon this face of mine, and made no deeper wounds? Oh, flattering glass. Like to my followers in prosperity, thou dost beguile me. Was this face the face that every day under his household roof did keep 10,000 men? Was this the face that, like the sun, did make beholders wink? Is this the face which faced so many follies that was at last outfaced by Bolingbroke? A brittle glory shineth in this face, as brittle as the glory is the face. For there it is, cracked in 100 shivers. Mark, silent king, the moral of this sport. How soon my sorrow hath destroyed my face.
The shadow of your sorrow hath destroyed the shadow of your face.
Say that again. The shadow of my sorrow. Huh. Let's see. 'Tis very true. My griefs lie all within. And these external manners of laments are merely shadows, to the unseen grief that swells with silence in the tortured soul. There lies the substance. And I thank thee, king, for thy great bounty that not only gifts me cause to wail, but teaches me the way to lament the cause. I'll be one boon and then be gone and trouble you no more. Shall I obtain it?
Name it, fair cousin.
Fair cousin, I am greater than a king. For when I was king, my flatterers were then but subjects. Being now a subject, I have a king to my flatterer. Being so great, I have no need to beg.
Yet ask.
And shall I have?
Shall.
Then give me leave to go.
Whither?
Whither you will. So I were from your sights.
Go, some of you. Convey him to the tower.
Good, convey. Conveyors are you all. Thus rise nimbly by a true king's fall.
On Wednesdays next, we solemnly set down our coronation. Lords, prepare yourselves.
Good, lovely work, Stu. I didn't want to stop you because you were on a roll and there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening. Jamal, I want to just check in with you real quick because Bolingbroke sort of starts talking here at the end of the scene, and I thought everything you were doing was interesting and effective, and I just wanted to talk me through it. How are things landing on you? How's the journey going for Bolingbroke?
You know, I'm going to speak about the scene first because there's so many truths and contradiction that exist in this scene. And there's something that's happening for me as Bolingbroke and as Jamal, because I resonate with what's happening in this scene in a visceral way. Mirrors my life in some ways, but I'm not a king. But I am. And sometimes you don't know what you're saying. This is truly a mirror. What exists within Bolingbroke also exists in Richard, that also exists in everyone in the room. It's the spiritual concept of I'm everything that I am and nothing at all in the same space and time is what's loudest in the room throughout this scene. And you can only catch that if you have resonance with it. And as I'm receiving Richard words, I am also having my own spiritual and physical experience. And as we have said throughout this whole rehearsal, I'm not speaking words, but much is being said and what's being transferred back and forth. And so as this goes on, and as I challenge myself to stay with eyes on Nick and to really just receive, something is happening to me physically, and it must be for Bolingbroke in the scene.
Yeah.
You feel it through your system. Your heart is awakened, a fight is awakened, and also this wildness up here is floating and swirling. And it just happens to you when you open the vessel just to receive this moment that's happening, whether you want it to or not. I say this a lot in my own personal life, you know, in the state of the world we're in, there's nowhere to run and there's nowhere to hide for anyone here. What is happening, and we all will be here for it. And so I'm receiving all those truths is how I would put it with Bolingbroke. Yet he knows the clothing that he is putting on. It's so interesting as Richard was going through deposing himself and taking off the crown and, you know, releasing himself with the scepter and everything like that. In my mind, I'm receiving it and those things are coming to me as he is taking them off. And so literally the weight physically as he takes them off is sent to him. And that's also the power that, you know, not just kings have, that's the whole era of mankind, but all of us have. These words have power. And Richard, whether he's knowing this or decided, I love the conversation that was happening because I feel like all these things exist together, you know? These words have power and they are shifting everyone in the room. And there's nothing to know, there's more to feel, really. And so that's what's happening for me. I'm feeling everything while also putting on this garment that I know I must.
And I don't not believe anything that he's saying, but as great beings who take these seats do, they know that it can mean their death, and it might be. And so you don't take these seats to save your life. He's also thinking about the thing about what you were saying, Nick, about surviving. I was having this conversation today. I was like, I never think about surviving. I don't think kings do. I think they're doing what they have been trained to do, which is to be king until they die. And when you're so conditioned in that way, you exist in that way. It's your conditioning. And there's also something beautiful in not trying to survive. Because if your life has been to hold this seat since he was a child, and this is what he was born into, we're all born into a context. Bolingbroke was born into a context too. There's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. And even if you exile yourself, you still have to deal with yourself.
Well, and what's interesting I love everything you're saying. What's interesting to it's that conditioning that you were talking about is absolutely something that Richard would have had, and that sort of that conditioning to sort of do what you are supposed to do, whether or not it means your survival, it is something that Richard would have had, but Bolingbroke was not born into that context. And so what's interesting too is I think that, like, and you said, you talked at the beginning of the rehearsal about, and it's something you come back to a few times, but this idea of like the receiving the weight, right? And I wonder if that isn't part of that weight too, that like Richard was trained from the age of 9 to do this, and we are in the middle, and this is just something that's occurring to me now, but we are in the middle of Bolingbroke's initiation, right? And Bolingbroke's training and his, that realization that like that is gonna be his reality going forward. So it's interesting.
And that's one of the things too, because like when we think about the context that we're born into, in the world you're born, like we make kings, we make them powerful, we make them feel how they feel. It's like we do this all through Shakespeare, Gentle Northumberland, like we name people. So we all are born into this context within the roles that we play, whether we choose them or not, that creates the world as it exists, even as the king exists. And Shakespeare points at this, I think, all the time, which is why I'm always attracted to, the maids and the fools and the other people. I'm not a Bible person at all. I'm an everything is everything person. I read it all. But the meek shall inherit the earth. And so there's something extremely noble in this worldly conditioning that puts kings on these pedestals. And, everything is everything. In the tarot, the tower falling is a blessing. It's not a curse. It's a blessing because we built these things up on not sturdy ground. And so that's why I say there's so many truths and contradiction here that Richard is talking about. I can't say that he knows it all because I think there's a space in between of knowing nothing where you do know it all. Is not in the mind.
Well, and Richard more or less says that in his last scene, right? Nor I, nor any man that but man is with nothing shall be pleased till he first be eased with being nothing.
With being nothing, yeah.
And every time he tries to figure it out,
thing.
Yeah, and every time he tries to figure it up out here, he's like, oh, no, nay, I'm the traitor, right? Every time the mind starts working, he said, wait, no. He goes back to the self. And so I just love that. So that's what's happening for Bolingbroke. I love listening and receiving all of this. It feels great and magical and true.
Great. Yeah, and lovely work, man. All of this is coming through beautifully. So let's take a look, Nick. Again, really lovely work in this back half. I didn't stop you because I didn't really have too much specific. Oh, my mouse has gone to sleep. There we go. I hate technology. This I think that it's, and I don't know that I need a specific answer for this, Nick, but I think that there is, feel free to make a meal out of taking the decision to ask for the mirror. Let it command it, because it's truly, to anyone who is not inside Richard's head, and you explicate it, but to anyone who's like not in Richard's head, the request for the mirror is a true non sequitur, and it's a moment where like everyone around him is like, I beg your fucking pardon, what? it's the last thing that we would expect him to ask for. That it may show me what a face I have since it is bankrupt of his majesty. So I feel free to make a meal of it, and I think where does, and I think I really, again, I'm sort of speaking in draft here, but I think it does come, it comes out of everything you've been saying before, right? Alack the heavy day that I've worn so many winters out and know not now what name to call myself, right? It's like,
Yeah.
who the hell am I? I need something concrete to hang on to. Give me something. But you can take your time with it. Go, some of you, fetch a looking glass. Reader this paper. And I know, I think it's probably a technical thing. Really jump on fiend, thou tormentest me ere I come to hell.
I know, I keep missing that line. Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay. But I think and I think, and you can allow it to be, for he manages to find a certain serenity, but I think that's again, Northumberland is the person who gets under his skin. So anytime Northumberland is talking to you,
it's just a scrolling issue because it's at the bottom of the page. You know what I mean? So
I totally get it.
I'm like, oh darn it, because that's the one cue that really has to be on top of it. Absolutely.
Yeah, don't beat yourself up. It's something to work towards. If we don't get it, that's nothing in the world.
Right on.
They shall be satisfied. I'll read enough when I do it, where all my sins are writ, and that's myself. I love this line. I'll read enough when I do see the very book indeed where all my sins are writ, and that's myself. And what I find so fascinating about this is that it is, I think, definitely Miranda, correct me if I'm totally wrong, definitely the first and possibly the only, well, no, I wasted time and now did time waste me, but it's certainly the first time that we're dealing with him taking accountability in any way. Like, he is admitting to having sins.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably why Shakespeare put in action right after that line with the glass entering, so that the audience would have a moment to really soak that in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take some more time with that now. I realize that's interesting because I've been rushing through that line.
Yeah, take some time with it. And I think let it be, again, especially with Richard and in this scene, feel free, if you think that something could be an in-the-moment realization, let it be.
Okay. Yeah, it's discovering about which lines are for the public and which lines slip out of him and which lines are for, it's easy to play this scene with one way, all public, you know what I mean? But really there's,
and even if there's
so much
layers
going on.
And again, like you're the two of you are absolutely right. We could work on this for months, right? because the shadings in that too are so, because it's public and private, but then it's like prepared or unprepared, and it can be the combinations therein. It's like I can be speaking intimately and it can be very prepared, and I can be speaking very publicly and it's slipping out of me, right? So it's like within there, there's still a ton of shading and variation. So I'm gonna say, like, in a minute we're gonna go back and we're just gonna do it straight through, and that'll be pretty much more or less the last thing that we do before the Q&A, because I think the scene clocks in at just about 20 minutes. But I would say, like, strong and wrong. I think, don't worry about pick a lane and pursue it, and then if you feel the need to change it, just pull a hard left. Play, yeah. No deeper wrinkle. Has sorrow struck many. Yeah, I thought you handled this really well. Again, similarly, a brittle glory shineth in this face, as brittle as the glory is the face. I think, again, it's so interesting, especially in incredibly verbose plays like this, or Love's Labour's Lost also sort of jumps to mind, that like Shakespeare will always put the most profound sentiments in the simplest of terms, right? So it's like a brittle glory shineth, and it's a short sentence, but it is also the most profound truth that he has spoken. That it is like, especially in this world, right? I think there's Jamal, I loved everything that you were talking about, but I think it also speaks to a contradiction in that, like, you said it yourself, I'm not a king, but I am a king. And I think that there is a difference between other people calling a person a king and having that sense of authority in oneself. And quite often in these plays, the person sitting in the throne is not the person who feels kingship in themselves, right? Again, legitimate kings we meet in these plays, Hotspur. Henry Percy is someone who has that kind of authority in them. Hal never does, not even in Henry V. Even, you know, I love there's, you know, what I love about Henry V too is like the chorus will often give you the most jingoistic version of events, and then is immediately undermined by like what happens on stage, right? Now all the youth of England are on fire. Cut to like 3 old drunks in a bar, right? A little Harry in the night. He's going around talking, and then what he does in the next scene is he steals a cloak from the oldest member of his army. He goes and he picks a fight with one of his with one of his soldiers who is making some very valid points about the validity of the war, and then he complains about the fact that it's all his responsibility, right? Upon the king essentially translates to, why is this my job?
You're tough on Henry, Will. My goodness.
I know. I'm tough on all of them, but I think that like that is an essential truth that these plays investigate, that like the glory of that crown is brittle. That assumed authority breaks so very, very easily.
And how, I mean, what an extraordinary thing to be writing and playing upon a public stage, except they didn't, you know, play this scene. And you can really, as we're working and drilling down, you can really see why. I mean, this is subversive stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
It's insane. I mean, it's insane that this was performed during the year of the Essex Rebellion. It's truly insane.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of like technically, Nick, give yourself as much I think let yourself feel that truth, and then I think take your time to make the decision. As brittle as the glory is the face, I think we can safely assume that by the time that you have said that, you have made the decision to break the mirror.
Great.
I have to go momentarily. I've accidentally locked Margaret out of the apartment. So give me 1 second, and then I will.
Good, because I have a couple of questions for Miranda while you're gone.
Great.
Good timing.
You know,
yes.
I see there seems to be elements of Hamlet in Richard, and I'm wondering, was Hamlet written before Richard II?
After.
Yeah. So there's elements of Richard in Hamlet.
For sure.
Perhaps.
And you know, back in the day, I used to teach at Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, and the Shakespeare classes were 1 year, 2 semesters, right? And we read everything. It was just such a blessing. But what I would often do would be follow the development of a protagonist, you know, from you know, a play to play to play. So you get Richard II, and then exactly you get Hamlet, who is smarter than Richard, and yet there's a kinship there, and I think we see Shakespeare just sort of working with these, I don't want to say character types exactly, but as a playwright, sort of developing these personalities from play to play to play.
We're talking about some similarities between Richard and Hamlet. Well, we're talking about similarities between Richard and Hamlet. Did I cut out?
You
little
did,
bit,
but
I got you.
Yeah, but we got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if Hamlet was written before this or after Richard II.
It was after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Very good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it is interesting that both plays also sort of deal with botched handoffs of power. Well, in this, I mean, this would have been. It's sort of crazy to think too that like, and this again, I'm just sort of like, Miranda, tell me if this is wrong, but it's like when Shakespeare's career starts, Elizabeth is already old, right? So like for the whole first half of his career, there must have been this unspoken question in the air of, for 10 years, who's going to take over? She's going to die sometime. She's going to die soon. Who is the next one going to be?
Yeah, you know, and of course she'd named James the First at some, but I would have to look up exactly when that became official. But even when it did, I don't think it was very reassuring to the British, because they thought, well, you know, that's nice, but there's no guarantees we're not going to be plunged back into these horrible religious civil wars and the persecutions that they'd endured under Mary. So I agree. I think there was just this profound unease that can only have grown as she got older and older, and her death was imminent.
And who is James going to be? Didn't we behead his mother?
Well, she was a Catholic. And by the way, I think Elizabeth, I really think she did not want to do that. It was bad. She was her cousin, it was bad precedent, to be beheading another monarch. But I think after the Babington conspiracy, I think Elizabeth had no choice. So
yeah. But
I also see similarities. Oh, sorry, between this play and Amadeus, and I wonder how much Richard had influence on young Mozart. And there's maybe a little Mozart Salieri balance. So I feel like the brilliant sort of, the way he dances around with language.
There's something very personal and also something sort of archetypal, I think, about the relationship between Bolingbroke and Richard.
Yeah.
Well, even Miranda, I had never thought about this, but even hearing you, and I mean I knew this, but hearing you describe Mary Queen of Scots as Elizabeth's cousin, who she had murdered. I mean, I am Richard II. No, you're not that. But
no, you're not that.
More accurately, I am Henry Bolingbroke. No, you're not that. Because
no, you're not that. Yeah, well,
political divide.
And of course, that there was a belief that as much as Richard, as poor a king as he had been, he was still the king, and this just sets in motion. And this is Tudor propaganda, but this just sets in motion this line of failed kings, that finally has to be resolved by Henry Tudor. Yeah.
Excellent, friends. I want us to go back and do it again. I'm just sort of scrolling through real quick just to make sure I didn't miss any notes. I think again, Nick, just another moment of decision, right? It's funny that causes me the way to how to lament the cause. I'll beg one boon and then be gone and trouble you no more. Shall I obtain it? Name it, fair cousin. He always chooses pain. Bolingbroke has given you an out. It's shall I obtain it? Name it, fair cousin. You could and should just say, I want to go. But instead, you decide to once again mock him. Fair cousin, I am greater than a king. For when I was a king, my flatterers were then but subjects. So again, as I'm going to ask you to just sort of make some strong decisions as we go back and do it again. But is that can he not help himself, or is that what is where?
I wonder if he would have said something different if he wouldn't have gone to the tower. I wonder I wonder if he would have kept his mouth shut, if he would have had a better outcome at the end of the scene. But we'll never know.
I don't know, and that's a question for full production and for Jamal's playing, and Jamal, make whatever decision feels right to you in the moment. I want to keep this as non-prescriptive as possible. But it is, he takes that fair cousin and then and this, it's very well structured, and it's very, it's very witty, but he really does dig his own grave. Whither you go, oh good, convey. So finally, conveyors are you all that rise thus nimbly by a true king's fall. I'm going to take the pressure off of you. Don't feel like that needs to feel like an exit line, because you're delivering it well, but you're pushing just a little bit right now.
Sure. I recognize that.
And so I think let it be a moment, you can take your time with it and just let it happen, and make a decision. I would say make a decision about who specifically you are communicating to and on which parts of the line, right? And there's a lot of, I want to leave this as non-prescriptive as possible. See what occurs to you in the moment and give yourself time as we're doing it to let it be what it is. But it's those levels of am I speaking just to him? Am I speaking to the whole room? And is the whole couplet just to one person? Is the whole couplet just to one room? Is part of it to him, and then does it expand, or does it start out here and then contract? Whatever feels right in the moment. I want us to go through from the top. So I've talked enough. The two of you are doing absolutely stunning work. Strong and wrong, go for broke. Nick, let's all get back up to the top of the scene, and then Nick, make an exit. And at the end of the scene, Nick, go ahead and yeah.
All right.
So where everyone back at the correct place. Alack, why am I sent for to a king? Good. Nick, good. All right, Nick,
good.
Exit, and when you're ready, come on in, start us off.
Alack! Why am I sent for to a king? Before I have shook off the regal thoughts wherewith I reigned, I hardly yet have learned to insinuate, flatter, bow, bend my knee, give sorrow leave a while to tutor me to this submission. Yet I well remember the favors of these men. Were they not mine? Did they not sometime cry, all hail to me? So Judas did to Christ, but he in 12 found truth in all but one. I, in 12,000 none. God save the king. Will no man say amen? Am I both priest and clerk? Well then, amen. God save the king, although I be not he. And yet all men of heaven do think him me. To do what service am I sent for hither?
To do that office of thine own good will, which tired majesty did make thee offer, the resignation of thy state and crown to Henry Bolingbroke.
Give me the crown. Here, cousin. Seize the crown. Here, cousin. On this side my hand, on that side thine. Now is this golden crown like a deep well that owes two buckets filling one another, the emptier dancing in the air, the other down, unseen, full of water. That bucket down and full of tears am I, drinking my griefs, whilst you dance up on high.
I thought you had been willing to resign.
My crown I am, but still my griefs are mine. You may my glories and my state depose, but not my griefs. Still am I king of those.
Part of your cares you give me with your crown.
Your cares set up do not pluck my cares down. My care is loss of care by old care done. Your care is gain of care by new care won. The cares I give I have, though given away, they tend the crown, yet still with me they stay.
Are you contented to resign the crown?
I. No. No. I. For I must nothing be. Therefore, no, no. For I resign to thee. Now, mark me how I will undo myself. I give this heavy weight from off my head, and this unwieldy scepter from my hand. The pride of kingly sway from out my heart. With mine own tears I wash away my balm. With mine own hands I give away my crown. With mine own tongue deny my sacred state. With mine own breath release all duteous oaths, all pomp and majesty I do forswear. My manners, rents, revenues I forego. My acts, decrees, and statutes I deny. God, pardon all oaths that are broke to me. God, keep all vows unbroke are made to thee. Make me that nothing have, with nothing grieved. And thou withal pleased that hast all achieved. Long mayst thou live in Richard's seat to sit, and soon lie Richard in an earthy pit. God save King Henry. Unkinged Richard says, and send him many years of sunshine days. What more remains?
No more, but that you read these accusations and these grievous crimes committed by your person and your followers against the state and profit of this land, that by confessing them the souls of men may deem that you are worthily deposed.
Must I do so? And must I ravel out my weaved-up follies? Gentle Northumberland, if thy offences were upon record, would it not shame thee in so fair a troop to read a lecture of them? If thou wouldst, thou shouldst find one heinous article containing the deposing of a king and cracking the strong warrant of an oath marked with a blot, damned in the book of heaven. Nay, all you that stand and look upon me, whilst that my wretchedness doth bate myself, though some of you with Pilate wash your hands, showing an outward pity, yet you Pilates have delivered me to my sour cross. And water cannot wash away your sin.
My lord, dispatch, read o'er these articles.
My eyes are full of tears, I cannot see. Yet salt water binds them, not so much, but they can see a sort of traitors here. Nay, if I turn mine eyes upon myself, I find myself a traitor with the rest. For I have given here my soul's consent to undeck the pompous body of a king, made glory base and sovereignty a slave, proud majesty a subject, state a peasant.
My lord.
No lord of thine, thou hot insulting man. Nor no man's lord. I have no name, no title, no. Not that name was given me at the font, but 'tis usurped. Alack, the heavy day that I have worn so many winters out, and know not now what name to call myself. Oh, that I were a mockery king of snow, standing before the son of Bolingbroke, to melt myself away in water drops. Good king, great king, yet not greatly good. And if my word be sterling yet in England, let it command a mirror hither straight, that it may show me what face I have, since it is bankrupt of his majesty.
Go, some of you, and fetch him a looking glass.
Read o'er this paper while the glass doth come.
Fiend, thou torments me ere I come to hell.
Urge it no more, my lord Northumberland.
Commons will not then be satisfied.
They shall be satisfied. I'll read enough. When I do see the very book indeed where all my sins are writ. And that's myself. Give me that glass. And therein will I read. No deeper wrinkles yet. Hath sorrow struck so many blows upon this face of mine and made no deeper wounds? Oh, flattering glass. Like to my followers in prosperity, thou dost beguile me. Was this the face that every day under his household roof did keep 10,000 men? Was this the face that, like the sun, did make beholders wink? Is this the face which faced so many follies that was at last outfaced by Bolingbroke? A brittle glory shineth in this face, as brittle as the glory is the face. For there it is, cracked in 100 shivers. Mark, silent king, the moral of this sport. How soon my sorrow hath destroyed my face.
The shadow of your sorrow hath destroyed the shadow of your face.
Say that again. The shadow of my sorrow? Let's see. 'Tis very true. My grief lies all within, and these external manners of laments are merely shadows to the unseen grief that swells with silence in the tortured soul. There lies the substance. And I thank thee, king, for thy great bounty. Not only gifts me cause to wail, but teaches me the way how to lament the cause. I'll beg one boon, and then be gone and trouble you no more. Shall I obtain it?
Name it, fair cousin.
Fair cousin. I am greater than a king. For when I was king, my flatterers were then but subjects. Now, being now a subject, I have a king to my flatterer. Being so great, I have no need to beg.
Yet ask.
And shall I have?
You shall.
Then give me leave to go.
Whither?
Whither you will. So I were from your sights.
Go, some of you. Convey him to the tower.
Convey. Good. Convey. Conveyors are you all, that rise thus nimbly by a true king's fall.
On Wednesdays next, we solemnly set down our coronation. Lords, prepare yourselves.
Beautiful work, you two. I've got nothing more to say, and I think we're pretty much out of time. Just, it's been a pleasure and an honor.
Great.
Work, you two.
Yeah, that was great.
It was really great. We can talk a little bit if people have a few minutes. You know, want to be respectful of everybody's time. Of course, if you need to run off, you have other commitments, not a problem. But yes, a really great session, and just Will, thank you for the idea of having these guys kind of go back and forth with the parts. I think it really not only I think does it illuminate different things about the role, about the two roles, I should say, because you just inevitably get people with different perspectives seeing different things, and so it brings up items that both of you can talk about and or all of you can talk about. But then you get this glimpse of, or you get this viewing of different kinds of Richards, just because of people's inherent personalities. It's not a right or wrong or whatever, but just what Jamal brings and what Nick brings to Richard or Bolingbroke. You just it's just really fun as an audience member to see different qualities and different things brought to him. And in the first session, many of us were talking about versions of this we may have seen, and so they're just as many actors as would play the part are those kinds of variations and number of opportunities to see different kinds of Richard. So I think it was really exciting to work work this way. And through a lot of the conversation tonight, it started when you guys were talking. Will, you brought up the point of like, what motivates Richard to keep talking. And there's almost this element, this is how we all kind of operate. We try to relate it to something we can maybe more tangibly grab onto. And I just had this moment of thinking about Steve Jobs being let go of Apple, when he was first fired by the board. And Richard is obviously a very different type of character than Steve Jobs, who was a bit of a tyrant by all accounts of people who worked for him. But you imagine this situation of like, okay, here's this guy who, he's the king for all intents and purposes of Apple, of this guy, and we're going to fire him. And what is he going to do? How is he going to react? Like we're none of us have been in this situation before of like, this guy was king, but he's not going to be king anymore. So there's just like this tremendous, the word that came to me was this tremendous sense of awkwardness of just like, who says anything next? Like what? And it's kind of waiting for Richard to lead the tone of like, what is he going to do? And obviously a lot of different characters in Shakespeare's plays keep talking for different reasons, whether it might be rage or to avoid pain or different things. But it's just such a fascinating, and of course Shakespeare does this. He puts us on the highest level of like, yeah, king leaving, like stepping away from this God-given role. But it's still on a very personal level. Like, we don't know what's going on. We've never been in this situation. And what is this guy going to do? Like, is he going to totally change? It's just fascinating. Here I am talking on and on, but my motivation is just curiosity and passion for the material. What I do want to ask all of you guys who what I want to ask the group is, were there one or two specific things that you feel like you took away from working on this scene in particular about either the play as a whole or the character, one of the two characters? Nick, I know you mentioned, you talked a little bit about like just how your perspective has changed on the play a lot working on this. But if anybody wants to field that question, whether Nick and Jamal or Miranda or Will, if anyone wants to jump in with their, anything that's changed for them or shifted for them.
Well, I don't know if this is a change, but an extension, I think. Like, there's something that happens in this piece with Richard where he takes ownership of all that he feels and all that he's experiencing. And I think that that's just powerful. I think we cast on these beings to be above humanity.
Right, sure.
Regardless of what seat you sit in, you are a human too, no matter who or what God ordained you or bloodline.
Right.
You are a human. And there's something extremely human in this exchange. If we were in a different time, I'm pretty sure, and Richard didn't talk so much, he would have been in therapy for like the next couple of years processing all these things. Right, but in Shakespeare, this is what the therapy is, And so that just that goes with me. Like, these sorrows are mine. Bolingbroke says it, like, it's mine. Like, what comes with who I am, what I choose to believe, what has conditioned me, it becomes mine. Whatever the weight, whatever the end result. And so I'm just leaving with that, as we are in a time where I think so many people are like trying to access their emotions and own them. And it's hard. It's just hard. And we see a king do it. And it's difficult to do it. It doesn't make sense sometimes. It doesn't have to make sense. And so I just leave with that. It doesn't all have to make sense, but feel deeper than what makes sense.
Well, and on that point, I think, as we talk about the awkwardness and the pain, how many people in, quote unquote, real life wouldn't speak to that in the moment. And that's exactly what Richard does. He says exactly what he's feeling when in most of our day-to-day lives, if we got into a really uncomfortable situation, is like, okay, I'm going to try to extract myself as quickly as possible and just, get out of this. And he's like, no, I'm really going to face this and really tell you exactly what I'm feeling. And like you said, he probably saves a lot of money on the therapy sessions that he doesn't get to go to.
He gets it all out. Yeah.
One line item for assassin as opposed to like multiple line items for
exactly. Yes. Yeah. Anyone else wanted to share their thoughts or experiences?
I'll jump in very briefly, just because the only thing that I have to say is that this was just sort of like a wonderful reminder that these characters don't exist in a vacuum. Like that the texts truly are just blueprints, and Bolingbroke only exists when someone is playing him, and Richard only exists when someone is playing him, and that the sort of the wonderful surprise is that these characters can totally transform based on who's playing them.
Yeah.
And watching the two of you come at these characters from very, very, very different starting points has been really exciting. So that's all.
And I'll say, in my memory, this is the first session where you guys really spoke so much about personal or private versus public moments. I mean, of course, it can come up in a lot of different scenes. We did the the part of the trial scene from Winter's Tale, but and I think that lends itself to the beauty of this work, that there can be so many interpretations, and each combination of actors and artists can figure out, well, what are private, what are public moments, and where does the familial relationship come out more, and I think that was just really engaging to observe and to listen to you guys kind of talk about, because it just allows the scene to just come to life in so many different ways. So yes, it was great. Anyone else?
I really want to play Bolingbroke. I could totally tell after this. I keep thinking about that character. It's funny, and I find it so fascinating. I've gone back and looked at him, and I've been like, I never realized until this session the weight of that character before. I've always paid so much attention to Richard.
Sure.
And after working on this scene, it's opened up a whole new doors. Because he doesn't say as much, but there, like Will pointed out, there is so much happening with him.
Sure.
And I love what you said, Jamal, about the weight of the crown being put on him, and this gave me this image of physicality, and he carries a whole new weight that he didn't have before, and that Richard places upon him, and Richard does it with the lines, but it's just, there's so much good stuff happening. Really
right.
Cool
and it's the same question of, why did Shakespeare not give Bolingbroke as much to say? What's feeding that? What's going on with him internally that he, and you guys did talk about that a bunch. So there's just a lot of great questions for actors and directors and artists to wrestle with. Miranda, was there anything you wanted to add? I don't want to put you on the spot. But...
no, not at all. Just this just confirmed everything I always believe about Shakespeare. Following up from what Will was saying, just the plays really aren't complete until they're being performed. And Jamal, I loved what you said about how Bolingbroke, of course, isn't just standing there. He's receiving all this verbiage coming from Richard, and what is happening for him in that moment. And again, I said this the first or second session maybe, but the personal is political. That's what I always think of with these history plays, and we cannot forget the familial relationships, even though sometimes we're thinking, oh my God, how are you related again? And wait, another Harry, another Edward, but it really pays the effort to try to just master who these relationships were, or who these people were in relationship to each other, because that I think really offers us such a wonderful way into the texts. So thanks everybody. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So great.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Yeah, no, this was a wonderful session. Really, really great work, even in kind of a compressed time than some of the other groups. Just so deep, so rich. And I'm not just saying that. I really, really enjoy it. These are every session, every workshop series is another child, but I love them all. But this one was equally wonderful. And
That's
yes,
great.
for those watching, I hope this really inspired you to, go run with these characters, start to explore them. And, even taking a look at other scenes and what's going on there, and when do people talk and not talk. And it just, there's, again, there's an infinite number of choices you can make, but make them real, make these real characters, real people. Again, you can go back, check out, the previous weeks, check out all of our other sessions. You can support us on Patreon. That would be, helps us kind of keep the administrative lights on and allows us to keep the series going. We're excited, to keep going in 2025. I just want to thank again, Nick and Jamal and Miranda and Will, for your time and effort and energy on this. It's always great to see a very talented
the group of actors. My earbuds failing just at the very end here, but
anyway, really thank you guys all so much for your attention and energy and output over the weeks, and can't wait to see you back in the rehearsal room sometime soon. So thank you again. Everybody have a great night, and we'll do it again sometime soon.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, everybody.